I want to turn to James Comer, Representative James Comer of Kentucky. Now, this one hits a bit close for me because I spent most of my life in Kentucky. And James Comer is the Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee, which is one of, if not the most consequential committee assignments you can get in the House of Representatives. But he's a Republican pit bull and culture warrior, much like Jim Jordan. And his political mission has been to undermine the Biden administration and President Biden in particular and President Biden's family. So instead of dealing with issues which matter to day-to-day Americans, which I'm sorry to say Hunter Biden's laptop is not, James Comer has made it his mission to pursue this political agenda, which leads us to this clip. James Comer was on Maria Bartiromo's show. And she is one of in the absence of Tucker Carlson, I think you make a solid argument that she is the most right-wing propagandistic person on the Fox propaganda network. And James Comer, I think, is pretty embarrassed over the recent public L's that he's taken on the Hunter Biden crime family investigations, to the point that he says something pretty remarkably incendiary, even for a culture warrior Republican. So hear the clip and let's unpack it.
The media knows that, but they're just not covering it. Then you have the liberal media like MSNBC with their low IQ audience that are sitting there and they're being told bad things about me and members of the oversight committee because we have the audacity to investigate. So we're having to go against a hostile media, a media that's turned a blind eye. But I think the media knows that.
All right, Luke, what do you think? An entire network's worth of viewers are, in the words of this sitting Republican congressman, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, not small potatoes. According to him, MSNBC viewers, of which you and I are among that number, are low IQ.
We talked about during the main show. Imagine, Josiah, if Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. appeared on an interview on MSNBC and said that exact same thing about Fox News viewers, the entire world would melt down. All of it. It would be gone. It would implode. Or AOC, to pick another Congress member, it would be an explosion, the likes of which you've never seen. Democrats hate conservative voters. They look down on people. They don't care about the middle of the
liberal
country.
Elites,
the coastal elites in there eating their avocado toast. It would be wild, but he can say that and no one's gonna think a thing. Yeah, sure, call millions of viewers low IQ, and just when there's studies done, if you try to gauge the informed nature of viewers of different networks on just worldly events, what's going on in the world, it is proven that you are more likely to know less about what's going on in the world if you watch Fox News than other networks. That's just the facts. And so to be throwing that out there is just pretty absurd.
Yeah, it's okay. So and number one, I appreciate you doing that because it distinguishes between ignorance and stupidity. What James Comer was implying wasn't just that MSNBC viewers are uninformed. He was insulting them. He was simply saying, listen, it's not that they don't know what we're trying to tell them. He was tacitly calling MSNBC's viewers stupid, okay? So we don't have to sink we don't have to, trade insults there. But in terms of informativeness, as you say, studies have shown for years and years and years and years, it's nothing new, that Fox News viewers are, on average, less likely to be informed about relevant matters than anybody else. So to me, it's almost like you're throwing stones in a glass house. Why would you do that? Number one. Number two, as you said, the double standard, the asymmetry of expectation. Set aside the President of the United States. If it were a peer of James Comer, somebody of comparable status, comparable position, a counterpart in the House of Representatives, it would be all over. That would dominate every Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Fox News, OANN, Newsmax. Everybody would be talking about it. Plus, Luke, mainstream media. CNN would be running op-eds. Jake Tapper would be... this is wildly unacceptable. I mean, it would just be, he would be beside himself. He would say, guys, we can't just be insulting people like this. This is not who America is. President Biden would probably have to issue a speech from the White House condemning, any progressive who dared. Like, it's just, the asymmetry is ridiculous. And then it makes me wonder, because I hadn't heard about this until recently, and this was a couple of days ago. Where's the outrage? Where is the outrage from even the mainstream media?
Or liberals? Liberals are kind of just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, because we price it in, Luke. We do this all the time. We just price it in that Republicans can just say whatever they want. They can just insult us. They can say whatever they want, and then we just maybe raise an eyebrow occasionally. But we just got to take it.
And if Biden dares to call out the dangers that MAGA Republicans are in the ideology they support, he's so divisive. He hates a part of the country. He's a dictator.
He called half the country fascist when, number one, it's not half the country. Number two, he listed a legal disclaimer. It was a 7-page disclaimer about how
not all Republicans, not all Republicans, not all Republicans, not all Republicans, not all Republicans. Just some, and then they're like, "Wah!"
Yeah, right. After some Republicans, they're like, so he said all Republicans. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. It's so maddening. I'm telling you, and it's not just it can't just be us. It's got to be everybody watching. If you take away nothing else, Luke probably wants you to take away other things beyond but I'm telling you what I would like you to take away from this. If we can just get universal buy-in from anybody watching this video, reject the asymmetry of expectation. If we're going to have etiquette and decorum, it has to be evenly applied. And if we're going to allow people to say incendiary things, then we should probably permit it from all. We cannot have a functioning political ecosystem which grades two parties by two different standards. We can't do it. It is wildly unsustainable, and it makes the Democratic Party's very difficult hike up the political mountain. It's a sheer rock climb. It's just a sheer vertical climb. We can't do that. Reject the asymmetry. Call this stuff out harshly and demand that other people call it out as well.
Yeah, and just every time you make that point, more examples come to my mind. A great example of this, again, is CNN, and even MSNBC, but especially CNN, will do everything they can to bring on 400 Republicans to give their take on every issue, and they still get called liberal. Fox News only brings on a Democrat when it's like Tulsi Gabbard before she left the Democratic Party, who's just going to stand there and say Democrats are the worst. And there's all of this emphasis in liberal spaces too about the Republican voice not being heard enough, and we need to give the respect to their viewpoints. How about I respect your viewpoints enough to tell you when they're wrong? That's what I'll do for you, okay? I'll give you the respect of not treating you like a child and, let me hear out your fascistic views on not all Republicans, not all Republicans, not all Republicans, but some...
Why'd you say all Republicans, Luke? Why'd you say all Republicans,
some
Luke?
Who reject free and fair elections. I'm going to call that out, and I don't need to bring you on to this show to repeat 13 times it was stolen just because you heard it on Tucker Carlson's Twitter show, okay? I respect you enough to tell you to your face you're wrong and keep you off my show.
100%. And not even just like the occasional, like...
You can come on my show and debate if you want, sorry.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, you should. We welcome it. But, even beyond like the nominal Republican, like Tulsi Gabbard, who is no longer even, or not nominal Republican, nominal Democrat. And by the way, she's no longer even nominally a Democrat. She left the party. The one openly liberal voice that I can think of on the network, and I love her. I think she does a remarkable job basically walking into the Gauntlet every night, is Jessica Tarlov on the 5. What a job she
demolishes,
has.
Yeah.
And she's outnumbered 4-1. They should even call it the 5. It should be 4v1 is what it should be called, because the 5 implies unanimity. Yeah. But think about how stacked that deck is against, and meanwhile, I agree with you. The asymmetry of CNN, and CNN is almost, it's not just what people expect of CNN. CNN does it to itself. CNN's own talent. Again, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, others, and these are professional journalists whose work I often enjoy, but even I get frustrated with whataboutisms, and they feed the asymmetry of expectation. They go out of their way. The New York Pitch Bot, if any of you are on Twitter, I recommend you follow that account because it mocks the New York Times propensity. The New York Times, which everyone considers, a liberal rag. No, they both sides the heck out of issues all the time, which is why that PitchBot account, which is a satirical account, is so popular. They'll say anything like, like 9 out of 10 dentists prefer blah, blah, blah. Why that 10th dentist is a problem for President Biden, or what, it's always Joe Biden's fault. Like everything, every single thing, because they have to both sides the issue.
And then to the point he was even making, just to address his point, he said the media, the reason he brought up low IQ MSNBC viewers was to make the point that the media is treating him so unfairly. He's fighting back. He's being treated so poorly by the media, and he's trying to get the word out. All he's trying to do is investigate the commander-in-chief. And then he's on a network that nothing like that on the left. No one has a Democratic politician. None of them just have a complete machine that will do anything, go as dishonest as possible to bolster the message of that candidate. They have people who really like candidates. I definitely admit MSNBC is a very pro-democratic politician. Absolutely. But the propaganda machine that is Fox News, you don't have anything like that on the left. There's not this team sport. We're all going to coordinate and work together to defeat the other side, as there is with the Fox News right-wing media ecosystem and echo chamber. And so on a network where he just gets to spew whatever garbage he wants without providing evidence about Joe Biden, he's saying all the media is working against him. And also, even though James Comer, Republicans have a track record of just constantly making empty accusations and then losing the evidence to prove it, or just not talking about them anymore, and a truly horrible past on that, still CNN, MSNBC, every mainstream media outlet is reporting on, here's the accusation James Comer's making, and all of these people are, and they'll make clear that he hasn't provided the evidence, but still they'll outline all the things that he's accusing Biden of every time he comes out and makes his next headline-making statement. And that's what he wants, and they're giving him that. I have a hard time with this. Do I give him the airtime that he wants to get from people by talking about the accusations he's never going to prove? It's a tough thing to contend with, but mainstream media wants to be so fair to Republicans that they'll bring James Comer on, tell us about these accusations, and we'll fact check them here and there, but it's absurd. Everything, just like what we talked about in this other segment, we can keep going back to this. Everything is structured in a way where liberals constantly have to prove how they're not too biased against Republicans, against conservatives, but conservatives never are expected to do the same and prove they really respect liberal viewers or voters. Come on.
So it's so funny. I get thinking about. See, I think as a thought experiment, maybe you and I should try this one day to see if we could lead a social media campaign just to test CNN and be like, you know what, CNN, you are so pro-climatologist. You are so pro-round earth. You're so biased towards pro-round earth. I guarantee you if enough people said it, they would feel compelled to do a CNN town hall with a flat earther.
Stop it. I don't know if
seriously.
That far.
No, I'm serious. I think so. I think that the mainstream media
Republican
is so...
presidential primary with flat earther.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, it's a big... They'd be like, so big geography is, out to like crush the flat earth truth. I mean, seriously, like
big globe.
Exactly. Big big globe.
The globe making industry.
Yeah. The globe industrial complex is out to try to crush. No, seriously though, you can't tell me. They just have an allergy towards the accusation of bias. And here's what I'll say about the word bias. Everybody has bias. Anybody who has any sort of even vague opinion about a particular thing, politics, religion, sports, whatever, bias is inevitable. The question is whether or not your bias will contradict the facts. So I don't follow baseball, but I remember there was a time where the New York Yankees was the most successful baseball franchise in American history. That still may be the case. Or Michael Jordan. I've paid more attention to basketball. When Michael Jordan was active, he was just objectively speaking the best player in the sport. Well, that doesn't change simply because you like Michael Jordan, right? Your bias happens to comport with the facts. The question is, when your bias and the facts are in conflict, what do you do? There's nothing wrong with bias. Bias is inevitable, but do you check it? Are you particularly vulnerable to confirmation bias? So when it comes to the mainstream media, I have no doubt, I don't know if this is true, but this is my gut check. I'll throw Republicans a bone here. Do I imagine most most CNN journalists, most CNN workers vote Democrat? Yes, I bet that that's the case. The question is, how does that manifest in their reporting? Luke and I have just given you a litany of examples, and this is off the cuff with no prep, about times they go above and beyond to stack the deck in favor of Republicans to avoid the accusation of bias. That's how sensitive these outlets, and it's not just CNN, New York Times, I think you can make the case for AP and Reuters. Brian Tyler Cohen has this infamous tweet where the AP, Associated Press, or Reuters, one of the two, held up like it was a headline for unemployment under Donald Trump, and it was such a congratulatory headline. Under Donald Trump, unemployment gets to low of 4.8%. Then when Joe Biden is elected, and after a time when he's able to get unemployment to the same level, it's like disappointing unemployment level under Biden. It was the same damn stat, but one was for a Republican and the other was for a Democrat. We just all of us, we all do it. Even Luke and I are guilty of it to some extent. We grade Democrats and the left on a harsher curve. We have to stop doing it.
This really is the thesis of any of our collaborations.
Yes.
It's wild. And because sometimes you can't win for being honest, but you got to keep doing it. And an example of that, the unemployment example, is every time I talk about Biden's economic record, I'll explain, even though this is rarely talked about across all media for some reason, some media, but very rarely, he has overseen a historic and unmatched, when you compare to other comparable economies in the globe, economic recovery, and you can point to legislative action he pushed for and implemented that directly contributed to some of that, not all. And every time I talk about this, I'll include, listen, the president is not wholly responsible for the economy. There's so many factors. So I'm not saying all 12 million jobs or whatever it's been is because of Joe Biden, but here's maybe what he did that helped with that and all that. I'll always include those caveats. Under Trump, it was Trump did this, what was this? Even a lot of people will go, yeah, I guess Trump, he did really good things for the economy. It was the best it's ever been under him. Yeah, after like a slight shift from what it was under Obama, the trajectory we were already headed. After an economic crisis, Biden comes in and gets us back to numbers that we were seeing under Trump. But I don't ever even word it that way. Biden did that. I'm like, here's some things Biden could have done. And so the honesty ends up not giving Biden as much credit as anyone would give Trump. Then the dishonest side comes in when a Republican could even vaguely get credit for anything and gives them a bunch of credit. And then bibbity boppity boo, you have a bunch of even liberals who think somehow the economic record under Republican presidents is better than Democrats, when that's just objectively by every single metric not the case.
No, 100%. Listen, the fact of the matter is, okay, this is where it gets really complicated, but basically a presidential record, we even do this in a way with respect to legislation, right? Let's just get real here, okay? The president doesn't pass legislation. The president signs it into law or vetoes it, and from political authority as head of their party, certainly can press a legislative agenda. But at the end of the day, it's Congress which gets the legislation done or fails to get the legislation done. So President Biden is not single-handedly responsible for the legislative successes that he's enjoyed because he's not a member of Congress. He's not the guy with the only vote. He doesn't get to vote at all, as a matter of fact. He gets to sign it into law or to veto it. So we say this as political shorthand, right? Because he's the most powerful, sitting president is the most powerful man in the world. And in terms of the authority and power and influence vested in a single person, nobody can match the president, certainly not in the United States or even anywhere else on the planet. But too often, everybody, again, assigns everything, either all the blame to the president or all the credit, and neither of these things are true. So like with respect to the economy, Luke brought up a great point. Is Joe Biden single-handedly responsible for the 13 million jobs created on his watch? Absolutely not. No, of course not. It's not possible. He is presiding over the administration and the political parties and the legislative agenda, which has contributed much to this. But you could make the argument in terms of direct authority. The chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, has probably more direct control over much of the economic situation compared to anybody else. But the president's words, the president's agenda, the president's bearings, the president's priorities, the agenda that the president pushes in Congress, the things he vetoes, the things he chooses not to veto, the things he threatens to veto but never does. These things all have a really multifaceted approach and great influence on the economy. My issue, and I think Luke's issue is as well, though that nuance is true, that is never the approach taken by conservative political commentators. As Luke pointed out, at best, Donald Trump's economic successes, which, by the way, you have to shave off his last year in office for some reason. I refuse to do that. Conservatives are like, you can't count COVID. No, I do. That happened on his watch, and you would never grant that consideration for a Democrat, so I will not grant you that consideration. I'm not giving you charity. I'll play by the same damn rules that you create, and if you would blame a Democrat for COVID, which you would, I'm going to blame a Republican for COVID, which I can because it happened on your guys' watch. Deal with it. So anyway.
Especially because they don't say that COVID maybe was responsible for in the supply chain and spending that was done under Trump and Biden inflation. They blame Biden for COVID related stuff, but not Trump. Yeah.
No, 100%. But at the end, even if you gerrymander Trump's time in office to get the most flattering economic stats, they were, as we've discussed, mere continuations of Obama-era economic trajectories. So as we've used with this beautiful metaphor, Barack Obama inherited a 7-story hole in the ground left for him by President Bush. Over 2 terms, he built a majestic skyscraper, which was not yet finished. There were more floors to be added. Donald Trump came along and added 2 or 3 floors on top of the 100 stories already created by Barack Obama. And then in his 3rd year in office, he demolished the whole thing and gave a 9-story hole to Joe Biden. I'm not giving Donald Trump credit for all 130 stories when he only added 3 before he dropped the whole thing. And I'm sorry that you, whoever conservative or Republican who might be watching who are inclined to do it, I'm not inclined to give you that. I don't have to play the game that way. And anyone else is watching, none of you should do it either.
We can just look at the delta, the change in different metrics, right? And you look at unemployment, a slight decrease under Trump, a massive decrease under Obama, and then a massive decrease under Biden. And they'll just cite record numbers, like unemployment got to its lowest record under Trump, and that's amazing, even though again it was just a slight decrease from where, and it looked like it was headed that direction when Obama left office. But okay, you give it to Trump, and then they don't give Biden credit for after an economic downturn, he takes over and it gets all the way back down to that exact same number.
Right.
But no, it's not his doing, which it's not all his doing, but you said it was Trump's. Wow.
Right. Yeah, we can't do that. The standards can't just keep changing.
And then, as you said, I actually do think, and I say, I'm even fair to Trump. Wow. I don't think you can say he's to blame for the economic downturn. I think he mishandled it, made it worse. Yes. And that you can blame him for. If he'd handled it better, it wouldn't have been as bad. That's huge. But saying any economic downturn would have happened, something would have happened because of COVID.
Sure.
But even if you would handle it perfectly. But if you're going to say we're going to give that to Trump, okay, you should have handled it better. He lost his reelection in large part because of that. But you would have to, if you're honest, then say, okay, I acknowledge that because of the supply chain problems, because of the spending we had to do to get out of that crisis under Trump and under Biden, that's what caused inflation and corporate price gouging on top of that. And okay, I'll acknowledge that. But they don't. Don't blame Trump for anything COVID caused. Blame Biden for everything COVID caused. Don't give Biden credit for anything, even stuff he could get credit for logistically, economically, that is good now. The most remarkable economic recovery we could have possibly imagined. Still a lot of problems, but that's just the metrics. It's so absurd. Thank you so much for watching. For the outro on this video, I want to plug Josiah's channel. Hit them with it, Josiah.
Hey, everybody. I appreciate you watching. You can find me at youtube.com/@Pondering Politics, one word, Pondering Politics. If you like progressive commentary that focuses on coalition building with other elements of the left and calling the Republican Party out for what it's become, I hope you'll view my channel, give me a like and subscribe and some feedback. Again, youtube.com/@Pondering Politics. Thanks again.